YouTube, this is Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to my review series, Sexism in Movies and TV. So there's a whole list of reasons I could make as to why I do this show. In fact, during the Season 8 finale, I made a top 10 list of the double standards that Hollywood has when it comes to gender, or biological sex, whatever you want to call it. And I did make a lot of good points, and there are a ton of other topics. But the biggest and most glaring issue with what I tackle in this series boils down to the word hypocrisy. I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens to characters who are male on mostly American TV are things that would never happen to a female character in a million years. There's no way the FCC or foreign television would ever let that happen. If they did, Tumblr, X, Twitter, whatever social media platform is infested with cancel pigs at the moment, would rip them apart, metaphorically speaking. One reason I have to do this show more or less comes down to one word, and that is validation. Now, there are a ton of characters on TV who would be complete toxic role models for girls. And when it comes to those characters and their massive egos, the show will instantly validate them as opposed to taking a stand with reality and put them in their place the way they would with any male character, even if he's a character who's in the right. And that's kind of something that you don't see on American TV or shows imported from Japan, i.e. anime. Seems like good role models for boys on TV and in films have dwindled, while the number of bad role models for girls has not only gone up, but yeah, I'm just gonna say it. The people who write this schlock will instantly validate their horrid behavior at every point. And it's not just bad behavior. They also have massive egos that these crap shows will instantly bend over to validate as well. And when they're not doing that, they're more or less depriving girls of actual good role models. Instead, most role models for girls are the worst type of brats you can imagine. You know, the kind that would actually hurt their brother over something completely insignificant and minuscule. In recent years, positive role models for boys have fallen by the wayside. replaced by spineless cucks who cannot stand up for themselves and will bend over backwards for a girl, whether she be family or someone he has a crush on, and will more or less be screwed over in the end. And when you look at how these terrible episodes of TV shows and horrible films are written, the show and or film thinks this is okay. It says an awful lot about the jackass who wrote it. We need a men's rights revolution when it comes to the entertainment industry, specifically in film and television, because if we don't, things are going to stay the same. I blame the current state of movies and TV as to why young boys and young men have such low self-esteem. It should be pretty obvious that's why. No good role models equals terrible self-esteem. And those are some really good reasons as to why I do this series. In this episode, I will be ripping apart the Simpsons episode, Love is a Many-Splintered Thing. And it's one of the, well, I'm just going to say it here and now. You wouldn't expect this to be in an episode of this series, but this is one of those episodes where I have to basically give you a little overview first and then explain what I have against this episode specifically. The episode begins with Bart Simpson narrating. I mean, there are implications that this is the future or that this episode isn't canon. In it, we see the return of Mary-Splintered, who was meant to kind of be a love interest to Bart, but was only in 3 episodes. Even Wicked Binge will admit that Mary-Splintered being with Bart is the healthiest relationship this kid will ever have, which is too bad, because throughout the episode, he doesn't exactly appreciate her. She actually goes so far as to make him breakfast, showing that she actually does have genuine feelings for him. Which I guarantee you, by the end of this episode, that will change. Despite Mary's good deeds, Bart pretty much just neglects her to play video games. Queen of Smugness and Narcissism finds out and tells Bart off for neglecting Mary. In a weird way, kinda becomes an audience surrogate. Bart ditches Mary again. Eventually, they do get an apartment, so Mary has a place to stay, and she shows Bart a flyer for a hillbilly talent contest she's entering. Her family shows up and tries to drag her back, but I guess the Simpsons, kind of foil it, and Bart goes back to neglecting Mary. Lisa shows up and kind of tells Bart yet again he's making a mistake and shouldn't be neglecting the one girl who would actually like him for who he is. Homer comes in, strangles Bart. On the night of the Hillbilly Talent Contest, Bart is there, and it kind of looks like he's being supportive of Mary. But, yeah, what a twist. The video game addict spent so much time on his precious video games that he probably doesn't even know what he's attending. So, anyways, Mary won the contest, and Bart talks to this guy who tells him to take her to a British romantic comedy marathon, I think. So boring, it puts Bart to sleep. Bart continues to neglect Mary. I don't remember what city they're in. And he comes back to apologize. But since Mary has self-respect and is nothing like Marge Simpson, something I will touch on later, she actually leaves him for this guy. And then we cut to years later. Bart's still a video game addict, and Lisa is still there. I can only assume she either gave up or is trying to hammer in the lesson of how neglectful Bart Simpson is, or was, towards Mary Spuckler after finding out that her husband is deceased. He tries to hook up with her again, and then we get an end where she messages him, and I'm not exactly sure what to make of this, if she's gonna come crawling back to him every time this happens. Bart ends the episode with a really infuriating line saying, "No matter what happens in relationships, there's always a video game that can make you feel better about yourself." That's the one thing I remembered about this episode ever since I saw it when it aired. And now I'm going to get into why it provokes so much rage and fury within me. And that, in general, is the stereotype that all men are video game addicted buffoons. It's been a joke in several episodes of The Simpsons, going as far back as the episode Homer Badman, where Bart's obsession with video games was used by the babysitter to control him like a puppet and teach Lisa how to control males, which essentially made her nothing short of a fucking sexist, which establishes her as a sexist and takes away any and all sympathy by the time this happens, assuming that you, the viewer, are not incredibly feeble-minded. Then there was Marge Be Not Proud, where this concept and this aspect of Bart's character was the entire focus of the episode. In episode 44 of this series, I ripped that episode apart. And to be blunt, I did hear the whole thing about this episode being inspired by the life of the guy who wrote it. He actually shoplifted once, felt guilty about it, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Made an episode of a cartoon instead of giving money to the store or business he stole from, but, if you're wondering where the point is, or where I'm going with this, it's actually simple. And that's the fact that, Marge Be Not Proud has no purpose. In the episode Love's a Many-Spangled Thing, Bart constantly neglects Mary because of his video game addiction. Truth be told, yeah, Marge Be Not Proud wanted to have a purpose, or if this episode was meant to not suck, then it couldn't have been an episode of The Simpsons, because The Simpsons is an episode that that bows to the status quo. For Marge Be Not Proud to actually have a purpose, Bart not only would have to realize that what he did was wrong, but he would actually have to go through a character arc where he redeems himself, but at the same time, this whole experience ruins video games for him. And not only does he pay for the item in bulk, he then leaves, officially cutting Marge out of his life permanently. Bart Simpson may suffer consequences from his video game addiction, but they're only temporary consequences. As long as the status quo is a thing in Simpsons, which it is, he's always going to revert to being the default version of himself. Therefore, he's going to be a video game addict at the beginning of the next episode. Ergo, both of these episodes, both Love is a Many-Spangled Thing and Marge Be Not Proud, cannot work. Yes, The Simpsons is a show with continuity, and the status quo. Therefore, neither episode could work. Now, I want to talk about the character that they chose to use, and how exactly they chose to use her in this way. If they wanted to go for a romantic angle, which they clearly wanted, they should have used Marge instead of Lisa. Marge could easily view this relationship as, somewhat of a reflection of her relationship with Homer, and she could actually butt in and tell Bart not to neglect Mary, because she's scared that Bart will eventually go down a slippery slope and become Homer. Because, let's face it, Lisa Simpson is not cut out for romance. She is basically like Haley Smith. Nothing short of she's basically just this smug embodiment of greed. And ironically, for this story, that could work. She takes great pride in her jazz playing because she thinks it makes her an intellectual. When, I'm just gonna say it, it's really boring, and that's not just my opinion. In all fairness, these two are kinda two heads of the same coin. I've heard people bash country music in the same way that they bash jazz. Hell, Lisa could actually be aware of Mary's talent and instantly become envious. Just have her feel threatened by Mary's career and the fact that she could be better at country music than Lisa is at jazz. When we find out that Bart Simpson is great at jazz, most likely the blues, because he suffers more than Lisa Simpson does, it's the eternal joke known as bad writing. You could easily have her know about Mary, her talent, her career, her future, and have her actively try to use Bart as the means to sabotage Mary, basically because Lisa feels threatened. Like I said, when Bart was good at jazz, Lisa was insanely threatened, to the point where she caused him a permanent injury in order to make sure he couldn't play jazz music ever again. She's that threatened. Let's do the same thing here. Have Lisa know what's going on and then start having nightmares about Mary's success. First, she wins a hillbilly talent competition and is a famous musician. Then she becomes this world-renowned female magician. Then a corporate CEO, then President of the United States, then leader of the known world, and then the known universe. Have Lisa wake up screaming and be so envious that this little redneck is getting the life that Lisa feels entitled to simply by means of existing, and have her actually work to sabotage her. Okay, in episode 31 of this series, I reviewed the episode Bart's Girlfriend, and to be completely frank, the reason why Bart thinks he can just blow off Mary and that she'll come crawling back time and time again is because he's seen Homer and Marge's dysfunctional relationship and internalizes it as normal when it's not. He, in that episode, thought that all he needed to do is make the relationship with Jessica last long enough and then eventually get her pregnant and she'd be forced to marry him. He had no idea that Jessica is nothing like his circus clown excuse for a mother. And yeah, the reason why she dumped him is because not only can she do better, but she actually does have self-respect. I'm just gonna get the elephant out of the room. Marge Simpson is nothing more than a dumb bimbo who got knocked up early and is now taking advantage of that fact to live an easy life with no worries. Her only worry is that something happens to Homer that'll make it so he can't provide for them. I guarantee you, this woman does not love her husband. All Homer would have to do to incur the wrath of a divorce is tell Marge he's following his dreams, which means he quit his job at the nuclear power plant and is now going to be wasting his time on a fruitless venture that will bring in possibly a couple nickels at best. In that scenario, Marge would definitely divorce Homer, no questions asked. Marge had no career, no future, before meeting Homer. If you don't believe me, just look up some of my other reviews of The Simpsons from this very series. This woman is just a stupid bimbo who's playing house and could never survive a day in the real world without the help, without being Homer's wife or without the help of her tyrannical sisters. On the other hand, Homer is a terrible father. He spoils one child rotten and abuses the other, which, when you think about it, is kind of the opposite of how it should work. I mean, Bart is the eldest. He's the one who Marge gave birth to when he knocked her up originally, and which was the foundation for their whole relationship. So you'd think he would treat Bart very well. He doesn't. He treats him like scum. Unless this whole thing is meant to be a cycle of abuse, it still doesn't work because we would need to see Bart Simpson break the cycle of abuse by either being a good father or by not having any kids of his own. Which asks the question, why would he want this? Why would he want to abuse... I mean, does he truly hate men and boys so much that he would want a son for the sole purpose of strangling him? In all fairness, Marge deserves her fate. Actually, no. She deserves worse. She deserves for Homer to go to therapy, realize that he has mommy issues, realize why he would have been attracted to Marge in the first place, and then come to the conclusion that this situation is too good for her, and divorce her, forcing her to fend for herself, which inevitably drives Marge into bankruptcy. As Homer or not, this woman had no future. They say Marge is supposed to be a tragic figure. No, Mary would be a tragic figure if she got Marge's fate. And the only way this episode could possibly work is if Bart actually learned that this isn't normal and it certainly isn't functional. Another question I have is, what does Bart Simpson stand for? Some people say he's supposed to be a rebellious kid who despises authority. One answer I got was he was supposed to be a parody of a kid who likes video games. Since a lot of people say that The Simpsons is supposed to be a parody of sitcoms or a deconstruction of sitcom tropes, whether or not that one of those answers might be true, I doubt it was always what Matt Groening had in mind. Back in the 80s, Matt Groening did this comic strip called Life in Hell, which was basically just the means for him to, spout off his jackass opinions. But the thing is that Life in Hell was in a magazine or newspaper that was either directly owned by Rupert Murdoch or was owned by 20th Century Fox. which Rupert Murdoch also owned. But 20th Century Fox also did the Tracey Ullman Show, which, that's where The Simpsons made its debut. It's technically a spin-off of the Tracey Ullman Show. In the 20th anniversary documentary, Matt Groening himself admitted that he only created The Simpsons, who actually were originally a caricature of his own family growing up. Either Rupert Murdoch or 20th Century Fox, whoever was publishing this, would have been able to take it away from him, and it was in his contract that he basically provides one more cartoon, or at least a cartoon for the Tracey Ullman Show, so he can legally keep the rights to this liberal piece of crap. So he made The Simpsons for the Tracey Ullman Show, and like he said, he did it to keep the bunnies, and I'm pretty sure he's regretting that decision now. He could have probably tried keeping this. Despite how insanely pretentious it made him, I heard about all of the interviews where he said, oh, the sitcoms he watched growing up never really clicked with him on an intellectual level, and the zombification of the American family. Here's the thing. Sitcoms were invented in the 50s to promote the nuclear family by showing how happy and successful they were. They were not created to, intellectually link up with liberal moron. Because if that's what The Simpsons is supposed to be a parody of, or a deconstruction of, there's no way, given what we know now about The Simpsons, as in the 30th anniversary documentary, Matt spilled the beans, there's no way that could be 100% accurate, because I actually did hear about that one interview where he said that, and I think it was the one where he was asked, given that these are your personal opinions, do you ever wake up in a drench of sweat knowing that you've made Fox CEO Rupert Murdoch all the more richer? That's all I heard from said interview. I don't even know if Matt even answered, or if he just danced around the question, like I assume he would. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that, yeah, The Simpsons is a parody of sitcoms. Okay, what exactly is Bart supposed to be a parody of? To an extent, it wouldn't be surprising that if you psychoanalyzed Matt Groening, you'd find out that he wanted to retool Bart Simpson into being a parody of all of the class clowns he knew growing up, who were actually funny where he wasn't, and got way more attention both at school and at home than he ever could, or all of the boys growing up who were more popular than he could ever be. Hell, I wouldn't put it past Matt Groening to have this insane internalized hatred of men based on how he writes all his male characters. I'm not asking for a Gary Stu, but they're either all dumb, weak, or addicted to video games. Not to mention the fact that they're all drunkards, which is kind of weird because growing up at Homer's Mercy, you'd think that this would scare Bart away from beer, but he actually does get drunk in the non-canon future episodes, which makes absolutely no sense. You'd think that if Matt Goring, if this is what he was going for, that in the non-canon timelines, Bart would actually break the cycle of abuse. We are meant to, now I'm just asking the question, are we even meant to like this kid? Because that doesn't work for the main character. Here's the thing. For the main character of any series, or most series, excluding horror, we actually have to like them. Dan Versus got this right. I mean, the concept of the show is that something bad happens to Dan, and then Dan seeks revenge on who or whatever wronged him. You don't think this could work as a show premise, but it did. And that's where Beavis and Butthead failed. They were the main characters when they shouldn't have been. People actually liked these characters despite being horrible. For some reason. It is scary that in a time where we were kind of trying to, become, more functional, that there were twisted people out there who were finding kinship with Beavis and Butthead. This was meant to be a parody of stupid teenagers who did bad things. Which is weird because, no, here's the thing. If you make them the main characters and the show is a hit, and people actually like them somehow, I don't know, then the satire is completely lost. And by that same logic, I really don't think there was a parody or any bit of satire here. This was just the means for Matt Goring to keep the rights to that stupid comic strip that no one even that no one even remembers. And if I were to give you an answer to the question of what does Bart Simpson stand for, I would say nothing. And the reason as to why is because he is a straw man. Just there to support Matt Goring's jackass liberal opinion. Okay, now I'm going to ask the question, the two questions that are the obvious elephants in the room. 1, is The Simpsons funny? And 2, could it have ever been funny? Assuming that everything that this guy said during that interview I brought up is accurate at all, my answer to both questions is no. If The Simpsons is either a parody or a deconstruction of sitcoms, then it can't have the status quo. But The Simpsons is a franchise that actually needs the status quo in order for Fox to keep cranking seasons out like no tomorrow. That's actually the problem. With the status quo being such a big part of The Simpsons, the characters can't go through any character arcs. They can't grow or change too much. Yes, they can alter it, like Lisa becoming a Buddhist, or Rabbi Krastowski getting killed off, yes, those alterations work. But here's the thing. If this guy wasn't just being a pretentious idiot during all those interviews, then the Simpsons could not go beyond 4 seasons at the most. Each season seeing one member of the family, excluding Maggie and the pets, going through their own character arc, where they realize how bad their lives are and actually strive to become better people. Ironically, The Simpsons could work if the status quo was not a major part of the show, and the characters were completely different. You want to know how? Well, it's simple. Basically, give each character a goody two-shoes persona, a guise of perfection. Have Homer go out of his way to act like this all-knowing father who will do anything for his kids, loves them, and doesn't drink, while in secret he would basically be chugging down Duffs in the basement. Have Marge pretend that she loves her life and loves Homer, even though she could do better, despite, behind closed doors, admitting that Homer is the best option she would have ever gotten, and if she didn't marry Homer, she'd either be living penniless on the streets as a bum, or with her family under the rule of her tyrannical sisters. Have Bart act like a little Boy Scout, and then flip the script by having him actually, well, you could keep Alberto in, but have it that he secretly hates authority, views characters like Chief Wiggum, Principal Skinner with great... Lisa, in this hypothetical version, would need the least alterations. Just have her act like a goody two-shoes Girl Scout. Either that, or you could kick the status quo to the curve and do The Simpsons as they are, but give each member of the family a character arc. Homer could actually rise above things and overcome his alcoholism. He could lose some weight and go to therapy, give some bullshit reason as to why he married Marge. Maybe Marge in high school reminded him of his mother, and come to realize that he does not love this woman. The way she acts doesn't really make it look like... It doesn't look like she loves him outside of the money he brings in. And in the final season, do the opposite of what kind of do the same thing of what Matt Goring was going to do, but flip the script by having Homer divorce Marge. But not after destroying everything, so she would get next to nothing. As for the blue-haired idiot herself, she would have to come to realize that she can't do any better than Homer, especially at this point in her life. Her looks have completely faded, and Homer has complete control over her, because he brings in the money. She'd have to realize that she only stayed with him because she wanted to be provided for. Hell, that could even be the reason as to why she married him. Bart's character arc would essentially be realizing he's not funny, and essentially, like in Marge Be Not Proud, he'd learn from that experience, and it would ruin he'd give up his video game addiction because this whole experience would have ruined video games for him. Hell, that episode would have been way better if it ended with Homer and Marge getting Bart a Malibu Stacy doll for Christmas, disguise it as Bone Storm, and invite all the neighborhood kids to laugh at him. The thing that would set him straight would be losing his popularity. Hell, you could just have a new transfer student come in, be the class clown, be funnier than Bart, have someone else be more popular and cooler than Bart, and as he watches his popularity crumble, maybe Ned Flanders would take sympathy on him and would mold him into a functional human being. Lisa's character arc, and for the record, character arcs would not apply to Maggie or the pets, but Lisa's character arc would be her coming to terms with the fact that she hates America. She hates capitalism. She hates eating meat, and she actually hates her parents. She hates everything that the nuclear family stands for. But, ironically, since Lisa is Lisa, we would probably see that she would probably reject the character arc and go further into her communist delusion. And before you say, well, why is Lisa immune, or why would she reject the events of her character arc? Well, the fact that she's an egotist entitled to worship is baked into the character's DNA. It was there when Matt Groening was working on The Simpsons. A lot of these people who say that the franchise went downhill when Matt Groening left, no, they are wrong. All of Lisa's worst traits were there, they just weren't focused on. Or at least, they wouldn't be focused on as much. So now that I think about it, Lisa's character arc would probably be her facing her delusions and realizing that she's unfit for worship, but that fact only actually drives her crazy, sending her further into her man-hating delusions, that are extremely communist, by the way. In this hypothetical version of The Simpsons, Lisa, in her delusions, sees capitalism as evil, and thinks that if America was a communist nation, it would basically be a feminist utopia that she would rule as an iron fist, as its dictator. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. A show that's a parody of sitcoms, or a deconstruction of sitcoms, having the status quo actually be a constant force, is, well, it's extremely absurd. That would be like if Shrek was hypothetically 2D and try to stick as closely to the Disney formula as possible. I mean, and they would do that by having Fiona remain human and either marrying, or if more or less do those things and just replace it with sitcom, and you get The Simpsons. And those are my thoughts on Love is a Many-Splintered Thing. I really gotta say, the idea of Bart being in a relationship and neglecting his girlfriend because he's a video game obsessed moron isn't funny. It portrays him as, well, a video game addict who, the show doesn't see him as having a problem outside of neglecting his girlfriend, but he really does have one. And it is actually sad, because Mary is the best thing that could possibly happen to Bart. Homer strangling him is not discipline, it is child abuse. Something that Full House did as a very special episode, but The Simpsons uses as a running gag, because I guess Matt Groening hates family values. Either that or he thinks this is funny, which it's not. The show treats Bart's video game addiction like it's something normal. It's not. And it's the reason why he kept blowing Mary off time and time again. Video game addiction is not a good thing. I have decades of experience with this one in multiple ways. It's the kind of thing that can warp you into a deranged crook. And for the record, this would not be the last time it was used in something that Matt Groening created, or the last time that Matt Groening would use video game addiction as a joke in something that he wrote, which is my main gripe with this episode. Feels like Matt Groening wrote it. It takes a serious topic and shits all over it, treating it as a gag. Yeah, video game addiction is a serious problem, and believe me when I say it is by no means the way it's presented on TV. Video game addiction is by no means how it's portrayed on TV. That's the CSI effect talking. Video game addiction is something bad. It can cause you to make some real mistakes at times, and at the worst of times can get you to break the law. I doubt anyone here is going to take what I say seriously, but the thing is, The Simpsons actually did portray the effects of video game addiction accurately once. In the episode Marge Be Not Proud, where Bart's video game addiction got so bad that at a certain point he started hearing voices, and he was hallucinating right up until he got caught for shoplifting. So now, I'm gonna end this review by saying, are The Simpsons un-American? The answer is yes. Is this show funny? The answer is no. But it could have been. And those are the words I'm ending this review off on.